Hi, this is Dr. Martha Lucas, and you are listening to my podcast, Energy Medicine Woman. In this podcast, I discuss various energy medicines. I am a Chinese medicine practitioner and have been for over 20 years, but I also discuss other kinds of energy medicine. Some of them are related to Chinese medicine, like long-distance acupressure, and some of them aren't, like the long-distance Reiki treatments that I offer. But today I want to talk about your imagination. I want to talk about how getting lost in a daydream might be one of the best things that you can do with your free time. It's not a waste of time at all. It is not a waste of time. Using your imagination, getting lost in a daydream is actually good for you. So let's talk about it. First of all, during the pandemic, when it first started, and even somewhat now, a lot of people's lives were extremely disrupted in terms of being busy. Suddenly, even myself, in the beginning, when everybody was so scared and didn't know what to do, acupuncturists had to close our businesses for a few weeks. So you go from, and I taught all over the world. I had seminars scheduled through July of 2020 that had to be postponed or done online. So someone who was super busy then turns into someone who's like, now what do I do? I was supposed to be at the clinic all day today. Well, one of the things you can do is use your imagination to help calm yourself and help yourself feel better. For example, we did it as children, right? How many times were we involved in the imagination? Sometimes our imagination involved a toy. Maybe we had, I had Barbie dolls, and maybe I was imagining Barbie being at a grand ball with her beautiful dresses on. Maybe we're thinking about being in the forest and what magical kinds of flowers there are, or imagining dancing through a field of flowers. We did lots and lots of things, but it turns out studies have shown that as much as adults can spend as much as 47% of your waking life letting your mind wander. It's true. Studies show that we do spend a lot of time. 47% of your waking time is almost 50% of your waking time letting your mind wander. Now, some studies are different. That's not written in stone, but there are studies who suggest that we spend an awful lot of time letting our minds wander. And the thing is, lots of them kind of don't talk about it in a positive light. They kind of act like, oh, you're supposed to be doing a task. Well, no, that's not true. Daydreaming can have positive effects. In fact, think about it for a minute. Our minds, our brains, our bodies evolved over time. Certain things evolved over time for something positive, right? The things evolved over time for us to be successful at passing on our genes. That's evolution. So if daydreaming or letting our minds wander was bad for us, why would our minds still be doing it? Why would our minds be so prone to wandering? So when you think about it, there is the negative daydream, right? The negative daydream where it's painful. It's some sort of obsessive thought that you keep having over and over, and your mind is undisciplined. You seem to have an inability to stop it. You can't concentrate on other things because you're stuck in this negative daydream loop. And I call that worry. And I tell my patients, that's anxiety, right? That can be anxiety, that can be depression, all things that can be treated with acupuncture and acupressure. I specialize in treating old trauma, and releasing that. And so some people do need help. They get in a worry loop between their core energy and the part of your brain that keeps that loop going. But they're also playful, creative daydreams, right? There's even what some people call constructive daydreaming. Well, that can be beneficial to you. So, there's a difference between worry daydreaming about the worst thing that can happen, which doesn't have a purpose and creates a sense of loss of control in the person, to kind of a playful kind of daydreaming. So we want to think about that more. It's not a harmful distraction, right? Daydreaming is not a way you're avoiding doing something. It's something that our bodies, our minds tend to do. So we talk about the idea that daydreaming is good. Daydreaming, in fact, playful daydreaming, it might even improve your idea of your overall well-being, but also daydreaming can inspire happiness. It inspires happiness when you purposefully engage with meaningful topics. For example, you daydream about pleasant memories of loved ones, right? Maybe you daydream about a trip you just had with your loved ones, or some fun you had with your grandchildren. Or another way to inspire happiness with the use of daydreaming, with the use of your imagination, is to imagine yourself or a loved one in triumph in a situation where the odds were against them. So kind of a triumphant daydream. Now, again, there are people who navigate or gravitate into kind of worrying or neutral topics. But even when researchers gave those people a framework that guided them to imagine something positive, they were 50% more likely to feel positive after the session. So that goes to show that even a worrier, even someone whose wandering mind might spend that 47% of waking time worrying, with the proper framework of how to develop positive thoughts, the person can feel more positive. I'll never forget my own therapist telling me, about negative thinking, that our brains are made to think negatively, right? Evolution hasn't caught up that there's not always a tiger at the door. There's not always famine. But if negative thoughts can get big, then guess what? Positive thoughts can get big. And so that's what I just said. Even people who have a tendency toward negative thinking or worry, if they're given the framework to imagine something positive, something happy, they feel more positive after their daydreaming session. Now, the framework might include something like imagine or have a memory. What's a pleasant memory of yours? Maybe your first time you held one of your grandchildren. Okay, imagine that. Go back to thinking about that. Maybe somebody wants to think about having superpowers. All right, imagine that. Now, you might say to yourself, well, shouldn't we be able to do that on our own? Why should somebody have to tell me to be able to do that? Well, it may seem easier than it is to just switch from negative thinking to positive thinking, but it isn't that easy. Well, first of all, maybe somebody needs to tell you. It can be that simple. Like, yes, our minds in an evolutionary sense do tend to have more negative thoughts, but you can retrain your brain to think positive thoughts and then give them some ideas, right? In other words, you are helping them, or we are helping them, control their imagination. Control the imagination from going to always negative places to be able to switch over to go to positive places. It's like using your imagination as a healing tool. As I said, when I'm treating trauma in people, I have to talk to them a lot about using their imagination as a healing tool. So imagine yourself in a tranquil setting, maybe someplace in nature. I might ask them, what is your favorite place in nature to be in? And even that can help people reduce their anxiety when they use their imagination like that. And then put as many symbols or as many visual clues in there as you can. For example, the one about becoming triumphant over all the odds. Maybe you ask the person, or you think about a brick wall in front of you, and that's what you can never seem to get past to reach this goal. Then you ask, what what else is going on there? What else do you feel while you're near the brick wall? Because that will help them interpret what it is. Do they feel scared? Are they afraid they're going to get yelled at? Well, then their brick wall might be their boss. So asking the person to kind of engage in their imagination of what else is there besides the brick wall? Do you hear any sounds? Is there a certain smell? What's around you when you're in front of the brick wall? And then they can actually call their senses into action. I feel this, I sense that. Oh, wow, maybe that is my fear of getting yelled at by my boss. And so you actually help the person engage in this idea of, what the wall is this particular thing in my life. Now, some people might say, oh, I'm just going to climb over the wall. Okay, interesting that before in this situation, you couldn't seem to get past this particular impasse, but now you're just going to climb over it. That's great. That's great. If that suits their imagination, climbing over it, knocking it down, taking it apart some way, that's a great way to use your imagination in a positive way, visualizing something in a positive way. Some people suggest using things like pretend you're in a movie. You're an actor in a movie. And so you're going through the steps in the movie and the scenes in the movie from the beginning until you get to the end, which is the positive outcome. I know that forever and ever, psychologists and probably coaches have been telling various athletes to use imagery about the race, or even musicians. Imagine what it's going to feel like that night playing in the symphony. So we know from studies that daydreaming, especially when it's done in a healing way, in a positive way, can be very, very relaxing for people, can make them feel better, can reduce their mental blocks, and sometimes helps them brainstorm with all kinds of new ideas. So it'll help you reconnect with creativity you had as a child, because we all pretended as children. We all did that. We all pretended to be someone else, or we were with someone else, or we did have a superpower. So now we can do that as adults. You can set aside a few minutes every day for purposeful daydreaming, and just start with making a drawing, or thinking of a trip, or thinking of an instrument you'd like to start playing. Just pick an idea to focus on in that daydream. Maybe even have a goal. I'd like to feel less anxious, or I'd like to be able to go into that meeting and feel good. So it's like I said, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it healing imagination, meaningful daydreaming, all healing daydreaming. It has a lot of different ways that we can think about it. But the bottom line is using our imagination, using daydreaming to feel happier, to feel more relaxed. Maybe it's a positive mental rehearsal of some event we have coming up, some meeting or some job or some presentation, making the imaginary scenes to inspire us, actually, to make us feel better, to improve our creativity. Some people even call it a mental vacation. And believe me, all vacations restore our sanity, right? Vacations usually restore our sense of well-being. So sometimes just having our head in the clouds, just daydreaming, just letting our imagination go in a positive way gives us a better sense of well-being, an improved sense of well-being. So do that for yourself. Go out, get your head in the clouds. The next time you find yourself daydreaming or worrying about a negative thing, get your head back down to what is the outcome you're looking for, or when was the last time you had fun on a vacation, and switch your negative daydreaming or worry to a healing daydream, a healing imagination, right? Use it as a time to stimulate your imagination. Or you know what? Just think about what you used to imagine and daydream about as a child. It's all I can imagine endless possibilities. So At any rate, let's do that. If you have any questions, you may contact me at Dr. M. Lucas at acupuncturewoman.com. That's DRM LUCAS at acupuncturewoman.com, or you can check out my website, acupuncturewoman.com. All my services are on there, and telemedicine is there. So thank you for listening, and go use your imagination for a healing kind of a daydreaming experience.